Welcome, ladies and gents. Chris Andre here. You can find me at BetBoxing on Twitter for boxing related tweets, or you can subscribe to the channel. Click that notifications button and get a new notification whenever a new video is uploaded. Let's talk boxing. Before I get into the nitty gritty of the main topic here, let me just address something as a form of clarification. In the last video, when I did the Deontay Wilder video, and I was talking about why is he working on mid-range skills and that he should be working on being able to land that shot off the back foot. I had a few people that messaged me, 3 people that messaged me about that. 2 of them said, why wouldn't he essentially be working on other skills? Why just stay one-dimensional? And said Master questioned my position and saying he needs to work on the back foot. And he sent me a tweet that he'd sent to other people, but he sent it to me. He copied me into it to say, here are some examples of Wilder landed on the back foot. He was saying, let's debunk the myth with these 2 examples of him not being able to punch on the back foot. And he gave me the example of Dominic Brazil and Luis Ortiz, the knockouts in that fight. So let me just clarify something here. I don't believe Deontay Wilder is a hunter. He's not the guy he's not a Mike Tyson type guy who's going to chase you around the ring, and if you then get him on the back foot, his skill set isn't really suited to that and he loses his mind completely. I've never said that. I've never felt that. I've always spoken about the fact that he's a very patient fighter who lines you up and waits for his opportunity. So he's more than happy to give up rounds and take a few steps back and let you do your work while he's watching you and studying you. However, in those examples that are given, and I'll put that tweet which shows the video clips in the description box of this video so you can check them out too, the little highlight clips. You will notice that when he's moving backwards at a tempo that he wants to move at. It's almost like he's plodding backwards while his opponent plods forward. He's moving backwards slowly in a manner whereby he's not under pressure and his lack of coordination isn't going to cause him an issue with regards to him setting his feet. Now, it's high risk to just run at Wilder. So a lot of these guys don't do it because you could potentially walk into something massive. And so he's able to dictate that tempo. There are some examples, other examples too. Take Bermane Stiverne. Very fast hands, very heavy hands, but moving forward, he's flat-footed. And you could see that Wilder, with his height advantage, was able to maintain enough range consistently to deal with Bermane Stiverne. So I'm not saying he can't move backwards. However, if you watch even the Artur Szpilka fight, if you watch moments of the Johan Dualpa fight, you'll see that when they come in on him quickly and he has to move backwards quickly, when he's not dictating the tempo, that's when he starts to sort of cross his feet too much, get caught square on. He's not in control. If he throws that right hand and falls short and then he has to readjust as he moves backwards. So let's say he throws a right hand and he misses and then he has to move backwards to reset himself. You see him, he's all over the place with his feet. Okay. Well, with Tyson Fury, who's got that long jab, battering ram of a jab and the height and reach advantage, he doesn't necessarily have to come into a massive danger zone in order to get that jab off. So he's forcing Wilder back quickly, and Wilder looked like he was in a state of panic where he couldn't reset. And I sent a message to said Master in response to this, and I'm only saying this to clarify in case anyone else is wondering this stuff, by the way. But I'm not having a pop at said Master. I love chatting to you guys, and like I've said, even when you disagree with me, I'm happy to talk about it as long as it's always polite. I love the debate. So it's not like I told you this, and it's just a case of us clarifying something here. When it comes to Tyson Fury's entry point, when he falls into you, he can smother you by clattering into you. It's almost like a barge. He almost falls into you, and there's such a significant weight advantage that he was knocking Wilder off course, knocking and affecting his balance. So when I'm sitting there and I'm saying I don't think Wilder should be working, why are you working on mid-range stuff? I'm not talking about generally. Generally, he should be working on that sort of stuff. There's nothing, in my opinion, Deontay Wilder should work on bringing an uppercut into his arsenal as well, because a lot of smaller guys like Szpilka would come in low, and that would give him another weapon to be able to ward someone off. If he can whip in a powerful uppercut, if he can learn to time that well, then that's going to give someone else more pause for thought when they're thinking of coming in low to bum rush him. Okay, so I'm not saying he shouldn't work on other things, but I'm talking about specifically for a Tyson Fury fight. Fury's the sort of guy that will break his construct at mid-range. So as a result, I don't believe he'll have the luxury of being able to work on those things. That's why I want to see him be able to, when he's moving backwards quickly in a state of panic, to still be able to create, still be able to have his footwork intact and his balance intact, where he can still launch off those powerful shots, and also to develop a check left hook where he can pivot out to his own left if he has to, if Tyson Fury does start crossing his feet, to fall into him. Okay, so I just wanted to clarify that. Now, moving on from the whole Wilder situation, let's talk about Tibbs and Davison, okay? From a tactical perspective, I don't want to focus so much on the he said, she said, because listen, they've both given interviews now since, again, yesterday this was, I think, with the Boxing Social. And they've, when you're listening to their positions, sometimes it's almost like there's a difference in their version of events, but I can see why there would still be a difference without either one lying. It's one of those situations sometimes whereby if you speak to any detective, for instance, or psychological studies have been done on this, you could have 5 people that observe the same event and they interpret it so differently that they will tell you, this guy seemed aggressive, the other one was actually just engaging in self-defense, and then the other person will say it was the other way around. They've seen the same event, but they're interpreting it differently. And it could just be that they've interpreted this differently because there's a lot of overlap of what they're saying did occur, but there's also a little bit of a contradiction of a version of events. And it could just be that they saw things. So like Mark Tibbs, for instance, is saying he felt that he'd already made the decision of what would happen. Well, Ben Davison says that Mark Tibbs had said, I'm going to give you one more round, but that he might have just been saying that in an inquisitive manner just to see the reaction of Billy Joe Saunders. And at that point, he thought, no, I can't send him out like this. He's my mate. I care about him. I love the guy. I'm going to put him in danger. And he starts talking to Billy Joe, saying to him, Billy, I'm going to pull this fight. Now, Mark might have said that, like Ben says, in an inquisitive manner. And when he realised that, he's actually a lot more hurt than I thought, I'm going to decide to pull him out. Ben's not aware of that. So what happens is Ben thinks, right, I'm taking over. Whereas in Mark's mind, he's like, what are you doing? I've already taken a decision here. So it could be that just they're contradicting each other because they don't know what's going on in the other person's head. Additionally to that, you have to understand this is a high stress situation. Mark Tibbs is very, very close to Billy Joe Saunders, and so is Ben Davison. He's referred to, Mark Tibbs has said he loves Billy Joe, and he said that Ben Davison sees him like a brother. So when there's a lot of love there and there's a personal investment, emotional investment, it's hard to just, act in an instant and think with clarity. You have to understand, Billy Joe had the momentum. And 90 seconds before the end of the round is when the punch happened. So say 90 seconds or 100 seconds earlier, before he's walking over to the corner at the end of the round, Billy Joe is the one who's got the momentum. You're starting to believe. He's starting to look slick. He's landing some serious shots. And within 90 second stroke, 100 seconds later, you're sitting there thinking, this fight's over. Can it really be over? What's going on? The crowd's going ballistic. Canelo Alvarez was, pumping up the crowd, getting going. What has just happened? You're seeing your guy there that you love, clearly hurt, but how hurt is he? You're not quite sure in that split second. You've got another trainer there. You're trying to bat ideas off of each other. You're trying to talk over each other, though. It's a high stress situation. You've got a few seconds to make a choice. It's hard, man. It's hard. People just think, it's difficult. This is difficult. It's not an easy thing to do. And in that high stress situation, people can act quickly. Now, something like this has happened to me in the past before, actually. And I'll tell you what I mean by that in a second. But Mark Tibbs' position is, look, it did irritate me that Ben sort of decided to get in Billy's ear. He was there as support. I was the head trainer. And I needed that minute with Billy Joe. But in fairness to Mark, he's such a lovely guy. He really is a lovely guy. I've met him on a couple of occasions at shows. He wouldn't know me, probably wouldn't know my face, let alone know me by name. But, I'd met him at a couple of shows and spoken to him. And he's got just brief chats about boxing, about fights we were watching in that moment, actually. And he was just a gentleman. He's such a lovely guy. He talks to you like you're on a level, regardless of who you are. And Ben clearly loves Billy Joe. You can see that, I think. I think you can tell they're close. So they both want what's best for the guy. And he acknowledged that. So Mark Tibbs is saying, look, I don't necessarily agree with what Ben did, but I'm not angry because I understand how that could happen. And something similar has happened to me in the sense that I've got a friend who was a pro fighter. And he was in a fight where he was winning the fight, but the preceding round, it became a lot more difficult for him. And I felt like he was getting his tactics wrong, and I was ringside, and this was at York Hall, so you're right up to the close to the action, and I started screaming instructions. Now, in retrospect, this was a number of years ago now. You're going, so I was a younger man. This was a number of years ago. It must have been what, I don't know, 6-7 years ago now. And in retrospect, he did make adjustments, by the way, and he went on to win the fight comfortably. But in retrospect, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, if I'm his trainer and I've got some guy who's his mate in the front row telling him to do something different, I'd be pissed. So I do get it. But my motive was to help my mate because I felt like I could see something that they were missing. Well, if Ben Davison felt that he could see something that Tibbs was missing, he's acting on emotion. It's not, there's no malice there, right? And I think Tibbs understands that. But where they disagree from a tactical perspective, Tibbs was saying how he wanted Billy Joe to keep it long, to be slick, to box and come in and out and box and come out off the line. And he once walked in a week up in the week leading up to the fight is when Ben Davison, who was already there with Josh Taylor because he's got his undisputed fight coming up, that's when he started to get involved because he had some equipment that Tibbs didn't have with him at that moment when Billy Joe wanted to do some punching work, and they used Ben Davison, and Ben Davison started to help him warm up more and stuff like that. So he got involved, and it was decided that he would be in the corner, and it sort of naturally evolved, organically evolved with Ben Davison to be there. But he walked in one day and they were working on wrestling, and he was saying, look, Tibbs said, look, I don't want to see that during the fight. I mean, I understand there might be isolated situations, but we don't want to stand there toe to toe with this man. I want to keep this long. And what Mark Tibbs would argue is he's a devastating puncher, and he said he's a little bit flat-footed, not flat-footed, but he's not a mover, he's not elusive, or rather he's not a mover, but he's a high-volume power puncher, so you want to take that away from him by being in and out. That's Mark Tibbs' philosophy. And Mark Tibbs spoke, by the way, about fencing. He goes, I wanted to see Billy be a fencer, almost use a sword, like a sword. And I spoke about this in my preview video, okay? So there are a lot of things that Tibbs says that I really agreed with. He also spoke about, in the build-up, in my preview to the fight, I also spoke about the fact that Billy Joe tends to duck a lot. And if he ducks in that same manner, whether it's to the left consistently and pivoting out, or to the right consistently and pivoting out, whichever way he does it, if he's ducking consistently in a manner that's readable, he could end up ducking directly onto a shot because of the sort of trajectory of punches that Canelo throws, and that could end up changing the course of the fight. And that's exactly what happened. Now, Tibbs says in this interview, Billy Joe was told, because he started to duck in the last couple of rounds prior to that, to stop doing that. He was told to stop doing it. So clearly it ends up being an error from Billy Joe. And he does excuse it. He says, look, but in that moment, you're fighting the pound for pound number one fighter in the world. He's throwing punches at you. Your instinct is to get out of the way, and he was ducking. So he's basically saying, look, I get why Billy Joe was doing it, but it was an error. And we recognize that error, but he couldn't make that adjustment. So Tibbs is talking about a lot of the things that I spoke about in the preview. In the preview, I also spoke about the fact that there will come a point where Billy Joe has to go for it, but also where I would want to see him get inside. I do want to see him do that for various reasons. Like I said, Billy Joe Saunders, when he gasses, it tends to be cardiovascular based rather than muscular. We don't really see Billy Joe slow down in the way Frank Bruno would, because his muscles are filled with lactic acid and they're becoming slower punches, and it's more a case of him getting out of breath. So if he can get inside and start to wrestle Canelo Alvarez, and we know that Canelo's had stamina issues of his own in the past too, if we can make him work for every second of every round physically rather than just loading up on big punches, wrestling him as the naturally bigger man that Billy Joe is, although Canelo is thick set, he's come up from lighter weight categories. If we can lean on him, who knows, maybe we'll tire out Canelo. But if you can approach it even better in the manner that Bernard Hopkins or Andre Ward used to do when they wanted to take a break, what they would often do is lead with a power shot or a power jab, some sort of entry point punch basically, to enter, to come inside and come all the way in, where you end up smothering your guy and tying him up. So if you do that, let's say you land a 1-2 and then fall in, and you fall into the wheelhouse of the attempted counterpunch, and you fall into him and you grapple him and you walk him back, and then the ref says break, and you do that 3 times, you've landed 6 punches, he's landed none. So that becomes sloppy and boring to watch. You're the one winning those exchanges. And so I would have wanted to have seen Billy, like I said in the preview, mix up the pattern. Don't be consistently moving in. Don't be consistently moving around the ring. Don't be consistently on the edge of the pocket. Mix it up. Don't consistently duck, although do it sometimes. Mix it up. There's another lovely moment where Billy caught an attempted wide left hook to the body, caught it on his elbow, countered with that, countered with a left hand to the belly, and then immediately with the left hand to the head. Beautiful moment. Canelo wasn't expecting that. That's what you need to do. So I do feel that I agree in that regard with Ben Davison, in the sense that I would have wanted to have seen him wrestle more. Mix it up like that. Tibbs' philosophy on the situation was different. He feels that, and listen, Tibbs, like I said, brilliant trainer, very experienced. I'm just a guy, right? So, you know, it's just my take on it though. But he wanted him to be slick and keep it long. Win the fight on the jab, essentially. The reason I'm not sure that would have worked best is because I felt that Canelo took away that left hand. And he wasn't having success apart from the first round until he started to take more risks. But there would have been a calculated manner in taking those risks. But I understand him. Listen, you'd have been more likely to get a rematch had you kept it long and lost the fight on points and made your case of, look, I won the fight on the jab. Then it's a case of who likes what. And then if Billy Joe could have racked up another couple of wins and got his name back in the mix again, he could have been demanding a rematch, and there would have been a good portion of fans saying, listen, Billy Joe won that fight on the jab, right? Personally, though, I felt that, and listen, even with the big shots, you could see what the judges were doing out there. So personally, I would have felt that that Billy could have gone all the way in. But let me know what you think. Do you agree with Davidson on this situation that wrestling needed to be used? Or do you agree with Tibbs that Billy Joe should have kept it long? I know there's going to be a massive portion of you guys that are going to say, it doesn't matter, Chris. He could have done whatever he wanted. He would have lost the fight. Fine. If that's your opinion, fine. But if you were employed by him to come up with a game plan, you're not going to say, forget it, mate, you're losing. You've got to come up with a game plan. So what do you think would have been the best way for him to approach it? If he didn't have a very serious injury, which I have no reason to doubt their claims, but if it's not as serious as has been made out, or if he does make a full recovery, I'd love to see a rematch one day. I think Billy Joe could make adjustments to cause him problems. You know, I would give Billy Joe 20% chance of winning, maybe even 25% chance of winning. He would be a live underdog. So there'd be no reason why I wouldn't love to see that fight again. I don't actually think we're going to see Billy Joe fight again, but if he was to be okay and he was able to do that and he wants a second run at it, and we're going to see him in a ring with a Eubank and then maybe a Demetrius Andrade or something like that, I'd love to watch these fights, you know. So let me know what you think basically on the tactical element. Do you agree with Ben Davison that wrestling should have been worked on more, or do you agree with Mark Tibbs that he should have focused primarily on keeping it long? One final thing I'll say, by the way, in those interviews, you could see they were both excusing each other, which was nice because things started to look like they were a little bit nasty, you know. So Mark Tibbs, like I said, was saying, Ben Davison's a young man. He cares about him. It did annoy me a bit that he was getting involved in the minute that I wanted to talk, but he's a young man and he obviously cares about Billy Joe Saunders. And Ben Davison was saying that when Mark Tibbs asked him, I'm going to give you one more round, it was almost inquisitive, as though perhaps he was just to see trying to gauge the reaction of Billy Joe Saunders before deciding, you know, I'm going to stop this. Whatever the case might be, there's no need for there to be animosity between the two. Tibbs was clearly caught off guard, not expecting to give an interview, walking out of a changing room when Billy Joe was going to hospital. And he gave an interview, was, I guess, put under pressure. And he feels that he made the wrong choice in that regard. But ultimately, they both love Billy. They both care about Billy. And there's no reason why them two should fall out about what was, you know, an epic night in the career of Billy Joe Saunders that just didn't go the way they would have hoped. But let me know what you think about the tactical choices. Thanks for watching, everyone. Take care, chat to you soon, and God bless.